Welcome to Rock That Relationship, a podcast about all things relationship with Corey and Tracy.
Now let's get real and start creating relationships that rock.
Welcome to episode 8 of Rock That Relationship with Corey and Tracy. We're so excited to be here today. We're so excited about this whole season. This has been a great opportunity for us to share, for each of us, the 4 biggest lessons that we've learned in our relationships, and many of which have been kind of past relationships, so live and learn kind of thing. And, giving us 8 topics of things that we think are so important for us to really look at. And today we're going to be talking about giving others the benefit of the doubt. And talking a lot about, when we're looking at, people being, inherently good, or are we assuming the worst in them? We've talked a little bit about that in previous podcasts. What do we do when we feel like maybe we're giving the benefit of the doubt too much to people? Is there a line? Is there a limit to that, our generosity or our forgiveness? And same with others with us. So today we're going to really kind of take a look at our experiences with giving others the benefit of the doubt and how it can help us and how it should help us be able to have better, stronger, and more productive relationships. So let's get us kind of kicked off here. I mean, Tracy, we talked about this before. And a lot of times, we talk about a lot of these things before we even get on the podcast, which is why we even came up with this podcast, is because we had so many kind of interesting conversations where sometimes we agree or have similar experiences and sometimes we don't. And we actually got into this conversation where we talked about, with the benefit of the doubt, are people inherently good? Do we believe that people are inherently good and that thus deserve the benefit of the doubt? Right. And so I'm just going to ask you, I'm going to start off, Tracy, with your thought. What comes up for you both, like in your thoughts and your feelings, even a visceral reaction when I say people are inherently good? What do you think about that?
I say no.
I mean, just no. I say straight up, not good. All right.
I say 50% maybe, 50% no. I don't agree with that. That's something people always said, about the Diary of Anne Frank, that Anne Frank, I think she wrote that in there, that people are inherently good. But I'd like to see what she would have written after she got out of the concentration camps, if she, had. I think that we have to, in the context of a relationship with someone, that's different than just like in the general world. Are people, I don't go around thinking, oh, everybody's good. Everybody's good. I feel like that's a little bit head in the sand, right? But if I'm having a relationship with someone, be it friendship or, dating, yes, I'm going to have to assume, and I haven't always, and that's because of my, childhood issues, that what they're doing comes from a good place, even if it comes out in the wrong way. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's a global view of people, and then there's the view that you have of the people that are close to you and that you let into your inner circle. I mean, do you think all people are good, inherently good?
Well, I don't know if I believe every single person is inherently good, but I believe everybody has good in them, or at least a vast, vast majority of people have good in them, and they're not necessarily out to hurt other people. But, it's hard in a world of political divisiveness and, uncivil discourse and things where to keep this view. I mean, this is sort of my glass half full view of, assume the best out of people. But it's hard sometimes when we see a lot of, calamities and, real horrible things happening around us all the time. And that makes it really difficult. But I would say if I had to land on something, I would say a vast majority of people are inherently good. But I will say with a grain of salt too, that people who are inherently good don't always do good things, right? I think that even holds true for me. I think I'm a really good person, but I make mistakes. I've done things that I look back and wish that I could do differently because they weren't necessarily the best things to do. So,
but you didn't do it out of a mean place. Like if you're dating someone and you're like, oh my gosh, this person is not a good person and they're doing a lot of mean things. Well, you should get out of that situation, as soon as possible. But we're talking about, we're in a relationship and we love this person, be they a dating relationship or sister or friend or whatever. I'm going to assume now going forward in my life that what they're meaning is well-meaning, that they're not trying to be hurtful, like giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Well, yeah. I mean, in theory, you vetted them to some extent, right? To make sure. Because I think some people will give people the benefit of the doubt with no earnings behind it, right? Like you give trust until it's broken. Some people, you have to earn it. So I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, because I know you really well. And what you're doing right now is inconsistent with your previous behaviors. I know that this isn't really a malicious thing. Or, I might say, I don't know you very well, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and just assume, that you're making a good choice here, or a non-malicious choice. And then backpedaling if that doesn't work. But I would say that by the time I have people in my inner circle, I've vetted them so that I know what their real selves are like, or at least I hope that I have done that. But
let's put an example. So you're in a relationship, a dating relationship. You got the two people. Somebody comes home from work, the other person's already home, and some cranky things are said, or some kind of critical things are said. You know that you love this person. So rather than flying off the handle, which is what I've done 100 million times, oh my God, you mean that such a mean way. Like settling down, letting that sit for a second and thinking, you know what? I bet this person's had a hard day, or I'm having a hard day. So I'm receiving this in a more sensitive way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that is way more productive of a response, right? Than building off of it and being defensive and then cycling back around. And I mean, then you get in this kind of loop. Give someone the benefit of the doubt, especially if their behavior is inconsistent with who you know them to be. I mean, and that's the other question too, as we look at like people are inherently good, this idea of good and bad, it's like these kind of, dichotomies or polar opposites. Who am I to say who's good and who's bad? Really kind of, I'm looking at it more like someone who demonstrates, loving, respectful, intentionally positive behavior towards other people. That would be what I would define as good. And if I'm dating someone that's who they typically are, because I would assume I would be with somebody who was like that, and they did come home and they were cranky, I'd say this is inconsistent with my mental scripts about what I know about this person. And instead of getting upset about it and say, this goes against your essence, I would say, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least try to see. This is part of these podcasts are just like this in retrospect, what I wish I would have done. And in that case, I wish I would have said, are you okay? Did you have an okay day? Or are you feeling okay? Or is there something I can do? Instead, what I did was get mad and say, why are you being so mean to me? And why are you yelling at me? And then it would loop around.
Escalates. Well, then it escalates, right?
Exactly.
And I mean, I'm totally 100% guilty of that, both in perception and doing it. And rather than the other person just saying, hey, are you okay? Or what's up? You react. So I've always been a very reactive person, and that is something I'm really trying to change. And, I just got off the phone with my therapist a little while ago, and I had lunch with a friend today, and they both have this view that kind of you're set in your ways, by 50s, in your 50s. And I totally disagree. Like, I mean, yeah, okay, maybe some people are, a lot of people are, but if you want to change, you can change. I mean, I'm a living proof of that. I am not perfect. I have made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I want to change. And one of those things is being less reactive,
Mm-hmm.
Pickleball is helping me a lot with that.
Because you can just focus on the ball. And
no, it's because if you just freak out, if you just, have like a knee-jerk reaction, you're going to mess up.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for life. You just have a knee-jerk reaction to the person that you're with versus giving them the benefit of the doubt. You're going to escalate the situation, and it's going to, no matter what, not turn out as well as it could have. And yeah, okay, we talk about, I don't know that we seem like we know what we're perfect, but we are learning from our mistakes. So people learn from our mistakes.
I still need to learn from my mistakes. I'm talking about learning from my mistakes, but I think about it in the opposite sense too, is, how important it is for me to be with friends, a partner, or whoever, surround myself with people who also give me the benefit of the doubt. I remember in a past relationship, I might have like a grumpy or cranky day, and something will fly out of my mouth, and I'll think, oh, that wasn't very, very nice, or that wasn't very good. And I'll try to backpedal it, but it's, we've gone down the rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And my partner at the time time would, react, be also reactive, and then escalate. And then I would escalate. And I said one time to her, I said, what would be really nice? I said, that sometimes I have these anxiety things, and I definitely am trying to work on it. But I'm not perfect. And sometimes things come out. I said, it'd be really nice is if you see that happening, I said, I would really love it if you would just put your hand on my shoulder and say, what can I do to help? I said, that is what I need. Give me the benefit of the doubt so that I know that you're here to support me. And I said, and I'm going to do my very best to not have these little moments of anxiety. And I've certainly done a lot better, but I think I wanted to work in partnership, and I needed the benefit of the doubt to do that. And that never was something that kind of manifested in our relationship. And therefore, if either of us kind of got cranky or out of sorts, it just did escalate.
Well, and there you go. Communication, right? You just brought back my favorite topic is communication. And
wait, I thought your favorite topic was therapy.
Oh, well, I have a lot of favorite topics. And one of them is pickleball also, but, and like, that's the thing. I think all of us need to learn how to communicate well and how to not be reactive. The world would be such a better place, and all of our relationships would really improve. But it's really hard because you come to a relationship with all kinds of, as we call baggage, along with you.
And mental scripts, like this idea that we talked about this before, is this assuming the worst in others. Like if we don't have enough information, what we do, we referred to this before as the ladder of inference. You fill in the story with your own biases, your own experiences, your own vantage points, and basically create a story where because you don't have the full set of information. And what ends up happening is we assume the worst in other people, and without even knowing that we're doing it. And sometimes it gets so hard to differentiate between what our assumptions are and what our reality is. And then if we have an assumption that someone is cranky because of some particular reason that isn't really true, and then we get cranky, we're not giving them the benefit of the doubt either by just assuming that someone is coming from a malicious place.
And do you think that's different than speculating? Do you think this ladder of inference is? I do. I do. Yeah. Like speculating, we should talk about in a second, but the ladder of inference is like it's like these things are already on the rungs of the ladder, and you just kind of put them in that place. Like, okay, well, they must be acting this way because of this. Right. Exactly. Right. Yep. So it's like, oh, I already know what this person's coming, what their problem is. Yes. It's like, I guess that's a bias, right? It's like a preformed thought about what is their deal based on maybe past behavior, but also that's the other thing. It's like, this is why I'm so hopeful about people can change, is you don't really know unless you're talking to that person. You don't know why they're acting like that. Right. And sometimes they might even tell you, and it's not even really all that accurate because they're not sure. They're not sure. Right. But the idea is that we fill it in and then we behave a certain way. And that really affects whether we give someone the benefit of the doubt, especially if our ladder of inference fills in those stories with negative things. Like, you must be doing this to me because of this, and it has nothing to do with that. It's history. It could even just be something that happened during the day. It could, even something like they went to a meeting and the person they were supposed to present with was late, and it ruined the whole presentation, and they were really frustrated. And then they come home at night, and you come home and you're late for dinner just that very same night. And all of a sudden it's like, why are you always late? You don't respect me. I've worked really hard on this dinner for weeks and weeks. And you're like, you did not, you worked, and then you realize they're talking about this presentation with their coworker. Right. So sometimes it's like the deep seated issues, and sometimes it's just something in the present. But the idea is that, we sort of jump to these conclusions. Well, when you talked about before, you mentioned speculating being a little bit different, but we use speculating as a way to also not give people the benefit of the doubt because we speculate. So, when we talk about that, what do you think in terms of speculating? How does that relate to, our topic with benefit of the doubt? Well, I don't know how it relates to the topic. You're the professor here. You're going to have to put that together. But I think when I'm talking about speculating, which I have told you many times, do not speculate. Like, I know that is your favorite thing to tell me. Yeah, because you don't know. We have no idea what that other person is doing or thinking, especially if we're not in contact with them or the relationship is having difficulties. If you start to speculate, you're just going to spiral into this horrible place where you're like, oh, I know they're doing this. I know this is happening. I know they're thinking this. And, how does that help you? I'm always saying stop speculating. I think it's a terrible thing. I'm more even though I'm the more scattershot of us, like I like evidence probably because of my background, but like, show me the evidence, talk to me, tell me what you're actually thinking. Because if I sit here and just speculate about it, how could I possibly be right? I mean, yeah, okay, I might have a chance of being right, but the likelihood is I'm not. And does it even matter? Like, I need to hear it from the person. We should hear it from the person. I haven't always been very good at, giving somebody that benefit, or the time to tell me that. Right. And of course, I'm like immediate answers, I do not like to take space. So I want to know right then and there, or I will make shit up in my head.
Well, I think you hit it on the head a little bit here with your evidence-based stuff. I am a professor and I spend literally all day theorizing about what could be and not what is, which I think is really interesting. And that's really what speculating is coming up with a theory as to why something is the way that it is. And so I might look at a text and, for 10 minutes, what does it mean? What does this one word mean? But instead of saying like, hey, what did you mean by that? I wouldn't ask that. And I haven't asked that. And I'd like to start being the person that does ask that. But instead I try to make up all different kinds of things that I think that it could possibly be. And instead, this kind of doom and gloom, like I read into it and it's not usually as positive, as it could be. It's more negative. Well, they meant this and they meant that. And I, doing my professorial duty here, Tracy, is bringing it back to the topic is, how is that really giving someone the benefit of the doubt that they're coming from a kind of a non-malicious positive place? If I'm going to read into something without clarifying it and making up, what it might mean in my own head, then that isn't really giving someone the benefit of the doubt. That's assuming that they're, this text was really rude. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Was it really rude, or am I just misinterpreting it, or was there a miscommunication, or was it a joke gone awry?
Right. Or was it a short text that's I've been accused of that a lot, of like, oh, your texts are so short and rude, and I'm like, well, I was, doing this while I was writing that text, or I was doing that because I think that you want a quick answer versus, an hour later that I can write a more thoughtful text with grammar and all that. Right. I mean, I think, again, you have to communicate with that person. And that goes for both the receiver and the giver. If you are receiving stuff that you're upset about, then ask the person or talk about it, verbalize that, hey, it's upsetting to me that, this happened. And then give that person the opportunity to explain without just being mad.
Well, yeah. And I love this advice because you give it to me all the time. So as we talk about lessons learned, this is one of those lessons I've learned in my brain, and I still have a really hard time executing it. I don't know if it's just because I'm pre-programmed to speculate about life and I just do that for a living, or because I have some kind of fear.
I think you've been doing it long before you did it for a living. And also, I like to point out, not only do you come up with theories, which I do as an attorney as well, then you do surveys, right? You send out surveys getting answers from people about things like, what do you think of? So you do both, because in order for you to make the survey, you've got to come up with the questions first, right? So we can ask the questions, we can put that in our mind, but then we have to seek the evidence. So I can have 3 theories going on, but then I need to know, okay, I'm not just going to pick one of the 3 theories and say, oh, that's what it is. That's why that person's upset. Okay, here's my 3 theories about why this happened. Now I'm going to go and find the evidence, which would be asking the person what's going on in a non-confrontational way. I've not been good at that. I know,
Yeah. Well, okay. So then let's go back to this. So this is one of those areas where, like when I talked about on the episode about things like watering the garden, I felt really confident that I had learned something from that. I was actively doing something different in my current relationship and showing up in ways that I wanted to show up. This is one of those where it's not necessarily giving others the benefit of the doubt, because I do try to do that. But the speculating part of that, which undermines giving others the benefit of the doubt, I'm still really struggling with, and I'm still not doing it. So the question is, why am I struggling so much? Am I scared of the answer? That's what I'm thinking. I'm scared of the answer, or am I scared of the confrontation, right? Is it just the confrontation? I don't care what the answer is. I don't want to be in conflict. Or is I don't know. This is kind of like a existential question. I don't know. Am I scared of the process, or am I scared of the answer?
But it's also different per each situation, right? Well, those are 2 different things. There are people who are conflict avoidant. And when we get into, I think we should do a whole season on attachment stuff, because that really defines how people are going to show up in a relationship. Or is it situational? right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is this a personality trait of yours? Do you have a certain attachment style, or are these things you're doing in certain situations? Because I don't think you do that across the board. And
no, you're right.
You know?
Yeah. I would agree with you, right? It's a certain, so I don't know that it's conflict avoidant, but I think, for, folks that are listening is like trying to figure out if you're speculating and you're doing the ladder of inference or whatever it is, where you're basically making up your answers in stories because you're not seeking out the actual answer. Why are you doing that? And so,
right. Why are you not getting the answer?
Why are you not getting the answer? Do you not know where to get it or how to get it? Is it something technical, or is it more like, in my mind, I'm wondering if I just it's safer to not know the answer because I'd rather sit with a couple different theories because I like one of them better than the other. And I'm afraid that might not be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you have to ask yourself that, like, as the person who's wondering, who's sitting there, speculating and spiraling out of control, is why aren't you just getting the answer?
Right.
And
exactly.
A whole nother podcast is like, when you get that answer, why are you not believing or trusting that that's the truth? But again, a strong relationship is built on communication, honest, open communication. And I feel like everything in a relationship should be talked about, everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and I would say, as someone who's a communication major, I love communication. It is easier said than done. It takes I think so. It takes both people to commit to being honest, open, and transparent on a consistent basis, even if what they have to communicate is something that's difficult or something that's embarrassing or vulnerable. I think that asks for a lot from people.
Well, here's the question, and here's something that someone should research. They probably already have, but like, what relationships are going to be more successful? A relationship with one good communicator and one not so great communicator? One relationship with two great communicators, or one relationship with two people who really don't want to communicate? Is one of those going to be more successful than the other? Well,
clearly the one where I think the two people can communicate well, but I'm wondering if the situation where you've got one really good communicator and one who isn't a very good communicator, I'm wondering if that's kind of the worst combination of all. At least the two people aren't communicating, or really
They're
expecting
like, whatever
from each other. The two.
But then they maybe grow apart and they don't even know it, right? Because they're like, whatever,
Right.
I don't know.
So I mean, as we take this back to this idea of giving people the benefit of the doubt, if we're not clarifying what someone might have meant by their behaviors or their communication or their words or their texts or whatever that they're doing, then we're going to make potentially some more likely negative assumptions and not giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're coming from a good place. And a lot of times if I've found that if I clarify and I've asked someone like, what, I say, that interaction was, really difficult for me, even though I sat with it for 2 weeks and was seething about it. And then I finally bring it up and I say, it was really difficult. And I get back, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I didn't mean that at all. That's not, I came from this perspective. And then I feel almost embarrassed that I waited 2 weeks and that I thought that I had any kind of bad thoughts about this person, that they're being mean, or they're just not, they don't care about me, or they're being disrespectful. Come to find out that is not at all. And so by waiting and not communicating, I am definitely not giving them the benefit of the doubt. And I'm building up that sort of, spiral, or that mountain out of a molehill thing that's totally unnecessary.
Well, here's an example. I had a friend who said she was coming to Phoenix from Seattle, and I'm down in Tucson. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so hurt, right? But I was only hurt for 3 minutes because I don't wait. And I texted her and I said, I'm really hurt that you're going to visit someone in Phoenix and you're not coming to Tucson. And you had said you were going to come to Tucson, and she explained why and what was going on. And then I felt a lot better, and she apologized. And she's like, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings and all that. But if I had just let it fester, that would have really affected the relationship, because in the first 3 minutes, I'm like, forget this friendship. This is no friendship. This person's got other friends who are better and better. She wants to hang out with them and not with me. And, I'm like 3 minutes, bam, I'm asking the question, because I don't want to sit there and be upset about it.
Well, and that's the thing too, is, what a lot of times I know that I've done, and I know a lot of people do, is instead of just, you get, this friendship's terrible, I'm done with it, or I'm breaking up with this person, right? After one thing, they, how awful that they did this to me, instead of actually saying something to the person, again, giving them the benefit of the doubt, we go to our friends, and we go to other people, and we get these external opinions, and we get this like, we start talking about our relationships with other people. And can you believe that this happened, and that other person, they have no idea what's going on. And they're, Right. They start speculating with even less information than you have, and they start working you up, and then, things get blown out of proportion. And then now all of a sudden you're even more upset and less likely to talk to, whoever you're friends with or dating. And so I think that also can undermine, your ability to give someone the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. And you have to be careful. We do need to seek guidance from friends. We do need to talk to friends even about friendships, about dating relationships. Like, I think it's really important. A Russian lady once said to me, I don't need a therapist. I have friends. Mm-hmm. And that's like, friends can serve a lot of functions, right? We need to talk to our friends, but we also have to be careful, and we have to look at, is this friend working me up too much? Is this friend too invested in this? Why are they, giving this advice? Like, I take everybody's input, but then I do what I want to do. And I'm really careful. I don't care if you don't like my friend. I don't care if you don't like who I'm dating. I could care less, but I'm still going to listen to what you're saying. If either I ask you or you want to say something about it, but that is you need to really toe that line, because that can really end in disaster for a relationship.
Well, and I think part of it too is as much as so I'll solicit advice or guidance from friends, or even my mom is my kind of go-to person. And I'll find that, is cognitively aware of the fact that I might disagree with what they're saying. And I'm like, oh, that's just one opinion. I'm going to put it over here in this little spot in my brain. The fact is that I am not immune to that kind of external influence. Like, if 3 or 4 people are saying the same thing, and I'm just like disregarding it, like, no, I don't agree. I'm going to, like what you're saying, I'm just going to do whatever I want. At some point, my little shield of armor kind of comes down. By continuing to solicit this, it does make a difference. It's got to be going somewhere in my head. It's got to be affecting me somehow, even if it's just my mood. And then, of course, I'm behaving in ways, it's like that are just, out of character. And then, of course, undermining this whole benefit of the doubt thing, which I found myself doing. I've had maybe a small disagreement with a partner, and I talked to somebody about it, and they got me worked up. I got worked up, whatever the case may be. And then I talked to somebody else. And then by the end of these couple of conversations, I'm just so upset about something that was so minor when I got in touch with my friends to begin with. And next thing you know, I have just completely derailed whatever the situation is, even though I know I can literally say, hey, you're giving me this advice and I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. It still affects me.
Right. But if you didn't talk to someone and it was just you in your own head, wouldn't that be perhaps equally as bad?
Yeah. I mean, I do think having trusted people to talk to about things is important. But the other thing too, and I think you mentioned this earlier, is kind of seeking out those people to talk to that may be better situated for a particular situation. So like if they don't have a particular bias or an investment, maybe you want to go get some more neutral, someone who's a little further away, or maybe you want to get someone who's closer to the situation. Like maybe you don't want to talk about a work issue with someone at work, but you want to talk about it with a friend who knows nothing about work, because you know that maybe you'll get a totally different vantage point. I think it's not always like you always have to have the same exact go-to people for every single thing that's going on. I've had relationship issues where I go to a couple people and I talk to them, but then I've had, there's something that just strikes me as like, this would be a really good thing to talk about with X person because they have this experience, or they know me in this context. So I think for me, discernment about who to talk to is important, in being able to try to get that chatter out of my head that, kind of gets me riled up.
Well, and I've actually had very interesting and positive experiences with strangers. Like with people in random situations where I am a person who pretty much talks about most things. I mean, I'm not a private person. That may be obvious to people who meet me. And I want to talk about things. I think it's really important to talk about things. And so I'll talk about things, run something by a stranger. And it sometimes is so profound what you get. And it's somebody who doesn't know you and doesn't know that person that you're talking about. And they can see things in an entirely different way. I mean, I have, a roommate right now, very temporary. She's trying to figure out what she wants to do with her situation. And I asked her several very pointed questions. And she's like, my therapist hasn't asked me those questions in 10 years, So sometimes we get input from different places. I'm not saying you need to go on blabber everything to everybody, but I've had some pretty interesting conversations at bus stops.
But, I think what's funny about that too is that, it kind of goes back to this idea that we're the politest and the most positive with typically with people that we don't know. Like we'll go out of our way to hold the door for someone at a store, but then let it slam on the person that we're walking through the door with, that we came to the store with. But it kind of goes the same way. Like if you're talking to a stranger about something, some issue that's happening, that stranger will more than likely not only just ask you good questions, will also take a positive view of it. Well, maybe they didn't mean it that way, or maybe they had a really hard day. Part of it is because they're just trying to be polite, but that also, helps them give you an opportunity to give your partner or your friend the benefit of the doubt, right? You're literally seeking out people who tend to be more polite to strangers, and they're going to give you some kind of positive feedback. It may be a good way of kind of winding it down or balancing it out, because I know when I go to some of my close friends, they're more upset about it than I am.
Right.
Because they're so close to it. So
yeah, you have to be careful about that, right?
Yeah.
Very careful.
I mean, here I was with some very, very minuscule issue, and now my friends have riled me up. And then if I go talk to a stranger, they're like, well, maybe that person was just having a bad day. And then you're like, okay. So seeking that out is really important. Let's talk a little bit about this idea of why we haven't given people the benefit of the doubt. Like what is the drawback like for us in thinking about like, I'm worried if I keep giving someone the benefit of the doubt and I keep like kind of assuming the best intentions and that they're not being malicious. Like, why wouldn't we all do that? Doesn't that sound like just a great thing to do, right? Wouldn't the world be a more loving place?
Yes. Yes.
So why are some of the reasons that you haven't done it?
Because I didn't have good coping skills. My coping skills were anger. Just being angry. Just like I said, probably for the first, from the ages of 11 to 48, reactive to everything, maybe even to 50, reactive. Like, I think I've said this before. This is the first time I've been single in my adult life, right? And I don't like it, but I'm trying to learn from it. And I'm trying to see what went wrong. And a lot of it is my reactivity, and I want to get that out of myself. And I think that, for me, that is my childhood, like going into adulthood pattern of way of dealing with everything. Reactive, boom, react, boom, react. I've never, just sat and like thought about things or taken that time to come back. And when I say take time, that could be like 3 minutes versus, 10 seconds. I've always been the bam, boom, made it my opinion, got mad.
So how does that undermine your ability to give people the benefit of the doubt? Like being reactive, what does that do to you giving people the benefit of the doubt?
Because if you're reactive, and generally when I was reactive, it was in a more negative way, right? So I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, it's just going to happen so quickly. And I think that, with anything you do, meditation, if people say, oh, do we want people to be better people and whatnot? The answer is always slowing down, thinking more rationally, thinking more clearly. And when you're reactive, you really don't think clearly. And so you are, I think, more likely to fall into that negativity trap, right? Bam. You're trying to judge me. Bam, you're saying something about me I don't like. You're saying something that's really upsetting about my family or whatever I'm doing. Rather than, hey, maybe this person is concerned. Or I don't think when you make such a quick judgment, you do it in a positive way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean for
sense.
me,
Yep. And I used to be way more reactive. Well, I would even say defensive. Not only did I move quickly, but then I was, always defended my behavior. And I think that a lot of times came from kind of ego. I don't like being wrong. I don't like being taken advantage of. And if I give someone the benefit of the doubt over and over and over, I'm like, it's okay that you did this. It's okay that you did that. I know it didn't come from a bad place. And I do that over and over again. It somehow makes me look and feel bad, like I'm not worthy enough to stand up for what I want and need by letting this person take advantage of me. And so that for me is why I've done that before. Now I realize that, it's not a zero sum game. It's not like all of a sudden it's like, I gave you the benefit of the doubt 7 times and therefore now people are going to look at me differently. It's, really, it depends on the situation. Am I giving you the benefit of the doubt because you basically were having a difficult day and you acted out of, a place that isn't like your normal or typical behavior. That's one thing. Or am I giving you the benefit of the doubt that you're doing harmful things that are harming our relationship? And I'm like, it's okay. I know you cheated on me because I'm just not there enough. Like, is that what I'm doing? And if that's what I'm doing, then I need to check myself. And so I think for me, I've had to balance between, when is it really a benefit of the doubt for someone's kind of, again, going back to their behavior that's, kind of more benign and out of character, or is it something that's really harmful to the relationship? And as I keep giving them the benefit of the doubt, then it's making me look bad. Yeah, I know I was cheated on 7 times, for instance, or, I know I stayed when this happened and I shouldn't have, and I stayed 19 times. I went back, at that point in time, that would be a little bit more for me an ego thing. So I'm kind of working on, letting some of that go and saying, okay, I need to be very clear about what is harmful behavior to me and what is giving someone the benefit of the doubt for acting out of character. And I think that's the delineation for me.
Well, and that goes into the red lines versus orange lines. And what are you willing to tolerate? And if there are things that you're willing to tolerate in a person, then if you've already decided, well, I'm going to be with this person, then give them the benefit of the doubt. Just operate from that. If they're not, I'm not talking about cheating or abusive behavior or anything like that, but just being cranky or being upset or being quiet, not communicating well. That's the kind of stuff that, you say, okay, hey, can we talk about this? Can we, I don't like how that was said. I'd appreciate if you don't do that. But, I feel like I've asked for the benefit of the doubt a lot of times in my life. And I have a dog who is a maniac. And like, a lot of people wanted him put to sleep, when I first got him. And it's like, I gave him that space. Like, I took on that stuff. Like, I took on all of his issues. And if the issues in the relationship aren't causing you actual harm, if that person isn't bringing you down, like they're not ruining your life or whatever, you kind of have to meet them where they are. And I think that that's kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt. Like, people are going to act as they were trained to act when they were younger, unless they've done a lot of therapy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and, when we think about the benefit of the doubt too, there's one of my favorite topics to talk about with this is this idea of keeping score, right? Somehow we fight back because we don't give someone the benefit of the doubt because we want to be right or whatever. And then we're I'm not forgiving you. I don't want to forgive you because then, then I look bad. And, so we keep score. So, you were sharing with me earlier a little bit about the differences between keeping score. And I love the difference between tally and tit for tat. Maybe you can share a little bit about what your, kind of your thoughts are on that, but also if you have any experiences on, being tallied or tallying someone or tit for tat when it comes to this topic.
Well, tallying is like, they did this on this day. They did this on that day. They did this on this day, that day, that day. And just like keeping a running list and then, not letting that stuff go. And it's like, how is that helping you? Okay. This is the way I feel like every day is a new day. You wake up, that stuff is gone over. If you're still with that person, let that stuff go. But there are people that tally that up. I've been with them that go to therapy, and that is what's brought up is the list. And I feel like, to me, that is destructive. You don't like it, get out of the relationship. But if you're going to sit there and just keep a tally score, that's terrible. And then bring it up. Oh, me, you did this on this day and this on that day and this on this day. Then the person can never be free of that, right? You're always going to be bound to, oh, you did this and you did that and you did this and that and that. That really drives me crazy.
And what purpose does it serve?
It doesn't. Does it to make the person feel better? I don't know.
I mean, if your whole goal of a relationship is to bring each other up, tallying, it's never helping you do that. It might make you feel momentarily successful that you were right about something, but it undermines things. And again, you're not giving that person the benefit of the doubt or even your relationship the benefit of the doubt. You're just destroying it by keeping track of this master list of nonsense.
Right. Well, and it becomes toxic, I think, at some point. The same with the tit for tat. Tit for tat's different than tallying. It's, you did this, so therefore I'm going to do that. You did this, so I'm going to do that. You did this, so I'm going to do that. And that's just, some people aren't as good as the other person. They're not as smart. They're not as capable. They're not as motivated. They're not as whatever. But if you're choosing to be with that person, then meet them where they are, and don't keep a list, or don't try and get back at them. Does getting back at anybody ever work? What is that saying? If you're going for revenge, bring 2 shovels. I don't know why you need 2, but one. Or dig 2 graves or something. 2 graves.
Yep.
Yeah. One for them and one for you, because it's the same. It's like, what does the anger do? And a lot of people, like to tell me, get angry after a breakup. You get mad. Well, why? What is that going to do for me? Is it serving a purpose, or is it causing me more harm? And I think tit for tat, to hold on to those things, tallying, to hold on to those things, anger, to hold on to that. It creates a toxic atmosphere, and it hurts you.
Exactly. Yeah. In the end, it hurts everybody. There's nothing good that can come out of that, particularly in the relationship, and keeping that relationship productive and healthy. Mm-hmm. So let's wrap it up with this one kind of question here. So how much benefit of the doubt do you actually give someone? How often do you give it? What's your grace? Do you kind of have a thought about where your line is for the benefit of the doubt, or is it just really situational?
For me, it's totally situational. It really depends on the person. It depends on the circumstances surrounding the person. It depends on, it really does for me. But everything is, to me, in life is fluid. And, I can be in a relationship. We're in a nice, calm situation in Seattle, and then suddenly we're living with a dysfunctional family in Wyoming. And the person's that was in Seattle that I'm with is not going to be the same as the person that's now in this dysfunctional relationship in Wyoming, right? Mm-hmm. Because everything has changed. Like, you have to see that as you're fluid, situations are fluid, and people, not all people have the same skill set. But you know what? Maybe there's something else inside them that's really fantastic. That's where I land, because you know what I am. A hopeless romantic.
You're the hopeless romantic, and I'm the practical partner. I get it.
You know what I mean? Yeah, do you think I'm off base, or you think I'm it's true. People, you can't, in the law, there's the thing about a reasonable person, but it's a reasonable person under those circumstances, right? Yes. You can't judge someone as, here's the reasonable person that is sitting at the desk, and, they're typing out, they're looking at the scenario, and they're deciding what they're going to do in a vacuum. No, you have to look at the reasonable person in light of what's happening around them. How would a reasonable person act in those circumstances? And that's where I go. We are all fluid. We're all going to act differently in different circumstances, And I just think, if you have COVID and you're on a train platform in Amsterdam and you have a meltdown because no one wants to go to eat falafel with you, that shouldn't define your whole life, right? It shouldn't make your marriage fall apart or these terrible things.
I take it you're channeling something, because this is a very odd example. Is this like
people,
a strip
you
from
want
the
people to go to
Tracy?
falafel with you, right?
So someone wouldn't go to falafel with you when you were sick in Amsterdam? Is that what?
Yes, with COVID. And
because I'm sure our listeners can totally relate to that fictional example you just put out.
If you're the person, you've got the stress, your mom is sick, or you're taking care of a sick parent, right? You're not the same person as if you were just having a great work, you know what I mean? Let's say you're a single lady, you're working, everything's great, you're this great person. Now suddenly you got 2 kids, you're not going to be that same person. And you have to look at that person in light of those circumstances. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. Except for the Amsterdam falafel part for a while, but then I got it. I'm totally caught up. Okay. I think, I tend to be right there on the same page with you. For me though, there's a couple things that are just pretty critical. One is, to what extent is the severity of what it is that they have done, and how many times have they done it over and over? So something like really, really extensive, like a cheating, a lying, a stealing, or whatever it is. But, so that goes back to that red line, orange line thing we talked about in a previous podcast. So I think that for me, I think the benefit of the doubt aligns with those red lines and orange lines. And that's pretty clear, but I do think circumstances matter. And I've come to learn that A lot of times when people behave in ways that, aren't really all that productive, they're not really proud of those behaviors either. They're not really excited. I mean, when I'm cranky and I say something, I think, oh, I just want to reel that back. Usually people don't go around acting like that out of character and thinking, I feel great and really positive about what I just said. People are usually remorseful about it. And so I'm able to pick up on that too and say, okay, that's not how I want to show up. That's not, I'm sure, how they want to show up, and let's work together again.
And you want someone to give you that benefit,
right? Exactly. And again, taken me many, many relationships to figure this out. Again, still working through it because, this is all a journey. But we are about out of time here, but again, Tracy, thanks for a great conversation, especially around this, this topic that, some of the things we've been doing in this podcast is talking about really the nuances of relationships, really down to some things that maybe we don't really think about as much. And, this was one of those topics I hadn't really given a lot of specific thought to until we did it, which is, giving someone the benefit of the doubt. I mean, that's a really interesting concept when we think about it. And, at what point do we do that? And what point don't we do that? And what's holding us back? And why do we assume the worst? And, what can we do to, maybe foster the idea that people are, quote, inherently good or have good intentions? And, these are all really important things to think about as we continue to want to pursue and maintain our relationships to be healthy. So, thank you so much for tuning in and listening today. We're excited about this topic, and we are excited about our next podcast, which is about, giving each other space, this idea of independence, interdependence, and, and maybe how codependence sort of creeps into the things that we're doing. How do we create space for me, you, and us in our relationships? So stay tuned for another great podcast. And in the meantime, go out there and rock those relationships. If you liked what you heard, check out our show notes for resources from today's episode. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram under Rock That Relationship, and go to our website at rockthatrelationship.com for updated episodes and more great information.
Thanks for listening. Now go rock those relationships.